non-Asian. Two are here, Indonesia and Philippines. One will try to come in via remote participation from Pakistan. And then we've also invited a non-participant to the research, but we want to get she's Rito from India, who will give a perspective on their own study on digital exclusion, because we have a part on digital inclusion. So in the spirit of sort of peer review, we want to listen to how they're working on their digital exclusion index and see if it can improve the open governance index. So that's how it will go. Are we ready to... so anyway, I have the slides in front of me, so even though it's not projecting, and I apologize if the translators will find it hard to follow, but in the interest of time, I'll introduce the Open E-Government Index, or OEGI, and then 3 countries should highlight their national assessments. Indonesia, Banyu or Indriyatno Banyamurti of ICT Watch will come in. He's at the leftmost. Philippines, Lisa Garcia of Foundation for Media Alternatives will be next. If Pakistan can come in, he'll come in. Shahzad Ahmad of Bytes for All, who I guess you know. And then India, Ritu Srivastava of the DEF, Digital Empowerment Foundation, will come in. Our schedule is very tight because we just have 1 hour and we want 15 minutes for open forum. So we said that we do 7 or 8 minutes and we will cut the mic at 10 minutes. so people should not talk more than 10 minutes. Then we'll have an open forum. Are we set yet? Not yet. Okay. I will introduce OAGI. First, the background and rationale. I think we started discussing this coincidentally when the APrIGF was born, around 2010. We were wondering how the internet and ICTs were really impacting the main drivers of development, which is politics and governance. So is there really an impact of ICT-enabled network societies? Is it really possible that ICTs lead to more democracy? Especially in Asia, because we started in Asia. And then we were getting all sorts of concept of openness. Some of it are old advocacies like openness in terms of freedom of information. Yeah? There's a long tradition of free and open source software. Release often and all bugs are shallow. Everybody benefits, right? So we were wondering, is openness now becoming a normative value for democracy, participation, and development? So what we were wondering, what we were sort of now reflecting upon it was a mashup of different discourses. It was a discourse of rights, human rights, communication rights, free and open internet, freedom of information, internet rights, digital rights. It was also a mashup of governance concepts, and you know, the early iterations of this were transparency, accountability, citizens' participation in governance, yeah? And also the discourse of technology's role in society. Web 2.0 was coming into its own, open ecosystems were being started, there was open spectrum, open content, open culture, open source, yeah? So what we wanted to do was to have a measure of that. Okay, sorry about the screen. I was just going to flash several of the index systems we studied. eGov Index, UNDESA, Brown University, eParticipation Index, eReadiness, ICT Development Index. We studied all of that. And are our concerns already covered by any index system? And we said they apparently are not yet covered. So we said that it might be worth doing a new indicator system because the old ones focus more on, well, like e-readiness is more infrastructure or actual usage of IT by governments or by businesses. And this is the example we were grappling with before. Any government survey in the region or maybe globally, Singapore is always at the top, right? Who is from Singapore here? Are there any Singaporeans? Yeah? E-government? Singapore always tops because they're great in their e-government, yeah? Okay. But at that time, were we going to say, Singapore tops e-government, are they tops in openness? Yeah? We in the Philippines, we have crappy internet and crappy e-government, but we always top in civil society stuff, in freedom, media freedom, etc., etc. But were we able to maximize the network society benefits, yeah, of openness? If we were only, anyway, so that's it. So there were lack of measurements in many of these indices. There was no analysis how civil society was using it. If e-governance is really state and citizens with civil society in the middle, how can we not measure the capacity of civil society to be intermediaries to this? How could we have no legal and policy context to some of this e-readiness? For example, in a country where there is a duopoly, where internet affordability is very prohibitive, doesn't that compromise a citizen's right to the internet and therefore the right to access governance? Yeah? So that's what we wanted to do. Still no presentation. Anyway, it was working a while ago. So here we are developing a new concept or notion of e-governance, open governance, and open e-governance, where the key difference is governance is broader. E-governance refers to how ICT is used in that sense. We wanted to develop measurable indicators and metrics, and we want to do a pilot assessment. So we were fortunate enough to get some support from IDRC, the Canadian International Development Resource Center, which was starting its, are we flashing, right? I don't know where you are, so I'm in the background developing it. Okay. It was supported by IDRC, which was starting its ICT and governance sort of portfolio then. So in 2011, we had, it was an Asian fund. So we did Philippines, Hong Kong, Thailand, and Pakistan. Very diverse, no? Different economic systems, different economic development. 2012, we came together in Bangkok to learn from phase 1 and plan for a phase 2. Unfortunately, a phase 2 did not materialize because of IDRC political and funding dynamics. So we were in sort of a hiatus until we were able to secure a bit of support from the Making All Voices Count project, MAVC, in 2015. And then in 2016, we were able to secure the grant to do updating the framework and assessment tool. You remember that 2-year hiatus, a lot of things were happening. You know, open data was coming into the picture, open contracting, the OGP, which is the most significant state-driven openness initiative globally had come into being. So we wanted to test the instrument not only in Asia. So we had Pakistan and Philippines as the old testers. We wanted somebody new, Indonesia, which was also part of the OGP. Then we went to Africa, Uganda, and we went to Colombia. And we wanted to consolidate these learnings and finalize the tool and the toolkit, which for us means, can we now go from version 0.9, to version 1.0 and release it, so that any country who wants to study their jurisdiction using the tool can do so. I will rush very quickly now. So yeah, okay. These are the expected outputs. We did the tool. We have country reports on the 5 countries and a synthesis paper. And yeah, the outcome we wanted was, can this be evolved into a multi-country study where more and more countries will see this as an important measure of where we are. And therefore, in that sense, civil society can use it as an advocacy tool as well. Oh, you don't have an FOI law. Oh, you've access policies but nothing on gender or nothing on accessibility. Oh, you have very good e-government but only 40% of your population is connected. So therefore, 60% cannot access online government services. Yeah? What is it showing now? Sorry, I cannot see anything. Is it 5 dimensions of open e-gov? Okay. I will rush here because what the others will do is give a flavor of some of these dimensions using how they assess their own countries. So, but just to briefly go through it, I have to follow it on my own. There are 5 dimensions. First is meshed e-government. And the handout flyer that we have for you has that. You don't have to copy or memorize, or there's no test after this. But it's basically the back end. How is government organized to be able to provide openness? For example, is there an open data policy? Is there an open standards policy? Is there an enterprise architecture which links up, or are government agencies still in silos? Yeah. On the other hand, are there institutional mechanisms in charge of this? Yeah. E-participation channels is the dimension. If this was the previous one was the back end, this is probably the front end. What is the citizen-facing application that allows citizens to engage? Yeah? So are the government websites updated and interactive? Are there comment sections? Are they accessible to PWDs? Are there women's sections? Because, yeah. Okay. Third is digital inclusion. Again, the example being, how can we participate in governance online if we are not even connected, raised in the plenary session earlier? So the digital inclusion, which means both access and literacy, is the main element of this dimension, especially for disadvantaged groups, etc., etc. Okay. So it's involved with, is government really serious about enabling a wider public's use of ICTs and the internet for development? Next, number 4 is, number 4 is ICT-enabled civil society. Again, what you wanted to do, because e-governance is not merely e-government. E-government is just a part of e-governance. because governance involves a collective steering of society by all players, not just the government. And therefore, what we wanted to do is have a qualitative assessment of the intermediary organizations especially. How are ICTs being used by civil society? And this, I think one of the speakers will say, we have the least data on in many countries. Next, open legal policy ecosystems. Again, the point being that we may have these good projects and programs, but if the overall legal and policy environment is not conducive to openness, yeah, we have good e-government, but there is a ban on public assembly, or there are restrictions on the freedom of information, or there are restrictions on freedom of expression. Yeah? There's a public order law. There is a draconian online libel law. Yeah? So how can we say these are open if some of these things, and most of the things we put here, are not really focused solely on the internet space? They may be also on the offline spaces, but because they are part of the legal and policy ecosystem of countries, they also impact the e-governance space. And so we have a lot there. And we also have something new. Network neutrality came up as a public policy issue quite late in the day. But it's terribly important, right? Who controls? Who are the gatekeepers of the internet, right? Who determines what passes through the pipes? Yeah? So it's not traditional censorship in the old sense of the word, but it's filtering of content, it's gatekeeping according to type of content on the internet. Doesn't that impact openness? Okay, it's a PDF, so this is supposedly a cool animation, but it's a PDF. So basically, we have the 5 dimensions, and this is how we're looking at it. Meshed e-government and e-participation, the back end and the front end of e-government, as you were, and a policy to include everybody is like the supply side of openness. And that is e-government. Yeah? The role of civil society is the demand side. It enables the demand side. Therefore, it is not just e-government, and it's e-governance already. And e-government is just a subset of e-governance. And everything is impacted by the legal and policy ecosystems. So this is what we were discussing many, many months with the researchers. How do we frame this? Very quickly on methodology. Well, I'll skip it because we have no more time. In the open forum, yeah. What you have now is a very quick flyer just for this event, where the scores. There is a bit of an error, a typo error, which maybe Lisa can explain. But I just wanted to flash that there were actual scoring done per country, and there's a lot of ways to skin this cat, right? We can go by dimension, we can go by country, we can go by, demand side, or that's it. Thank you. What I'll do now is pass it on to the national researchers. The national researchers, we asked them to highlight one dimension which they felt was significant in their research. And in the process, you understand the dimensions more through their actual practice. Okay, thank you. So first is Banyu from Indonesia.
Okay, thank you, Al. I think you should present, actually you should present all of this research result. Then instead to pass it to its country, because what I already mentioned, that this research is full of dimensions, and also we need to try to elaborate all of these dimensions. And what I want to share in this moment is what we have already found in Indonesia perspective. So can we, or okay, maybe I will give you a, before the slide is come up. Okay, as we already know that Indonesia is big country. We have 17,000 islands more, 34 provinces that consist of more than 50 cities or regencies. So when FMA request to ICT was, can you do this research? The first question is how the scope of this research, because if we have to assess all of this local government, all of the local government from Aceh to Papua, which is 500 more cities or regencies, it will be difficult. It can be take a whole year or maybe more. So this research only found out about this national scope, the central government, and also the related organization in the central. Internet in Indonesia, now we have around 130 million of users. Is around 52% of penetrations. So, but unfortunately, most of it still localized in Java Islands. More than maybe 70% of this internet user still centralized in Java Islands. That's why, yeah, when we talk about inclusiveness, when we talk about the digital gap, when we talk about digital literacy, we have more challenges, because yeah, many of digital divide is still exist in our country. And then, related with this research, we have, like Al already mentioned, that Indonesia is one of the member and also the founder of Open Government Partnerships, and lead the chairmanship in 2014. And also we have the Open Government Indonesia, which is coordinated by Presidential Office, and then they launched like a data.go.id. It's a portal for centralized data for all of the government institutions in Indonesia, but unfortunately it's not implemented by all of these government agency or government institution. Is still lack of understanding on that and implementation on that applications. And also, we also in progress in one data policy that have the objective to ensure the interoperability and the use of government data. This maybe will be enacted within this year. So the presidential also it's coordinated by presidential office. So we hope that this policy will encourage all of the government institutions, especially the local government, to start think about the importance of one data and openness, data openness, because yeah, this is actually still like a new terms for us. And then how the research conduct. First, we did some desk study. We collect the secondary data, check the website and social media for all of the ministry or central government institutions, and also for some of the organization that it involved in this research. And then we interview also some of the key persons, and we make the draft of the scoring with some draft paper of it. After that, we make the validation workshop. We invite many multi-stakeholders. There are government there, National Development Planning Board, Ministry of Communication and IT, and also we have private sector, ISP Association, ISP Actor, e-commerce association, and then we also invite the academy from some university, and then also of course the CSO, the religion organization, and the disability communities. So we reconfirm what we already found in the study and interview with them. We just make like some FGD, and then we try to detail one by one of this dimension, and then we agree to get some score of it. And then after the FGD is finished, we do like the synthesis in also with the FML and the other countries to reconfirming the scores. Okay, the score you can find in this leaflet, but what we want to focus one thing is the dimension of the mass e-government. Some of the dimension that you can see in this brochure, like first, national e-government framework plan. We have already got the not the guidance, the umbrella policy, but for the detail of the e-government framework or e-government plan, we still don't have for that kind of this plan or framework. Also, Indonesia has a law of public information disclosure and Act in 2008, and like I already mentioned, we have a DataGo ID for the integrated government data portal. What we now want to push is law of personal data protection, because we still don't have the personal data protection law, but we have already only in level ministerial decree. The minister said that because the process to be the law is very long, so we have this intermediary, quote unquote, policy regulation to related to personal data protection issues. For the e-procurement, yes, we have already the integrated organization and also the policy, and also related to cybersecurity, there is a new updated also. On May, Indonesia president just released a presidential decree to establish we call it as National Cyber and Cryptography Agency. This organization is responsible to see about information and cybersecurity issues, but unfortunately this new agency is like so in government minded, because in this introduction also said that the cybersecurity is the part of the government issue that to be strengthened and driven. So yeah, we see this in this introduction also is mention real about the government. It will be established in September, so we have to wait to see what the implementation. Okay, that's it. Maybe just the overview, but the important thing is, yeah, we really appreciate for this research and hope we can implement it not only the national scope but only for the local scope, so we can find out what the score of the e-government for each the local government. Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Banyu. Again, I apologize. Yeah, let's have a round of applause. We're a bit thrown off because the presentations we all prepared for are not. So he was supposed to talk about a general overview and then to focus on the meshed e-government side. So he was citing a lot of the laws and policies that are present or not present in Indonesia. So the country reports will be available online very soon. We're in the final editorial stage, so please bear with us a bit. The next will be Lisa from the Philippines, and she'll also focus on one dimension.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Anyway, so I'll be presenting some of the results of the study in the Philippines. So first of all, I'll be giving to you a brief country context in terms of openness and e-governance. It's not showing. I can't see, sorry. Yeah. So anyway, so we have a constitution, yeah, which is a guarantor of freedoms, and then we have an active citizenry in the Philippines. We have robust media outlets. There's the rise of alternative media sources, and the use of social networking platforms is very much there. However, there are some laws that limit political freedoms and freedoms of the press, such as the libel, and then we also have the anti-wiretapping law. There's continued killings of journalists, and then there's creeping authoritarianism. Martial law is still in place in the whole of the Mindanao Island. In terms of growth of ICT use, it's very much there in the urban areas. However, there's lack of meaningful ICT access, especially among marginalized sectors. There's also conflicting signals from government regarding the use of social media, although I understand that they recently came up with a social media policy for government. There are gaps in ICT policy leadership in the past, as well as capacity of some state agencies. There's lack of meaningful civil society consultation in ICT policy, and there is the development of spectrum policy, which is being questioned. Internet penetration is quite high. It's almost 50% now, because these are old figures, and mobile penetration is 114 as of 2015, but it's now 126%. Fixed broadband subscriptions as of 2014 is about 23 million. If you look at the figures, this would tell you where that access, for instance, in the Philippines, ICT use and ICT skills are concentrated in some regions. In terms of what Al was saying, we also compared the Philippine scores with some of the indicators that we looked into, and it would show that the Philippines in ICT indices is generally high, especially in terms of skills and human capital development, but low in terms of general state and use of ICT infrastructure. In terms of the methodology, what we did was to review, do a secondary review of data. We also undertook a review of cabinet level websites. So we look at the dimensions and where they apply. And then we had 2 country validation workshops where we had a total of 17 participants. 8 of them are male and 9 are female. The respondents came from civil society, from government, and from the academe. And then to provide information on civil society access to ICTs, we undertook a mini survey to get their perception on the types of how they use ICTs. Next. So this would be the overall score of the Philippines. So it's about 6 when you total the different scores for each of the dimensions. The country, of course, is highest. Thank you. In terms of ICT-empowered civil society, but lowest in e-participation channels. And that would be, and I would be highlighting it. So we looked at the following indicators for ICT-empowered civil society. This is the use of ICTs for internal organization use, for coordination with allies, for public engagement and action, and for ICT, and the use of ICT for online resource building. So, as I mentioned, we did a mini survey. So we looked at the practices of some NGOs, including women's organizations that to deal with children, some faith-based groups, one political party. And the score is quite high. It's 0.77 if one is the highest. But in terms of for researchers, I mean, it was difficult for us to measure this dimension because there were few available resources to measure that measures this. However, as I said, we did focus group discussions and also key informant interviews with a group of NGOs, civil society organizations, and there's high level of awareness in the use of ICTs. And this may be due to the fact that those whom we surveyed were mostly based in the National Capital Region. But in terms of fundraising and online resources, there's very little use of this we found out in the Philippines. Nevertheless, we can say there's relatively abundance of civil society groups and political parties that are using already ICTs, and it's different, and especially mobile phones. So overall, if we look at the total picture of the Philippines, there's relative better meshed e-government dimension today than when we measured it in 2012. Because there's an e-government plan and interoperability framework that has been adopted. The scores in e-participation and digital inclusion dimensions are quite low, but there are several channels for participation available, but how this should be used by civil society groups is a question. And then it also shows, this study also shows that there's lack of supply of ICT services and capacity to meet demand for participation. So we don't know if that's due to political leadership or weak bureaucratic capacity. Nevertheless, ICT dimension is relatively high, and there is a significant demand in participation among groups. And it is necessary to enhance participation, including enhancing universal access, especially by women and basic sectors. And to summarize and to include the challenges, while there has been growth in e-governance policies and programs and channels for participation, the Philippines is still weak in terms of digital inclusion policies, such as literacy policies, policies when it comes to access for marginalized group, access for women. This is despite the fact that civil society is very much into ICT, they use ICT components, and it should be harnessed actually to allow for greater participation. Thus, there's a need to improve the open legal and policy environment in the country, especially the constraints related to freedom of expression, assembly, and the growing concentration of media. And just to update you, we plan to publish a synthesis report for all the 5 countries soon, and then I think Al mentioned already that the project methodology, the survey instrument that we used will also be published in the website of FMA. And then the findings will also be presented to government agencies in the Philippines so that they would know how they scored and perhaps policies can be made or amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Round of applause for Lisa and Philippines. Just want to highlight that the nature of an index is comparative across countries, which is great. But also within countries, there is a time element, right? When we started the the OEGI, it was a previous regime, right? And then now when we're doing it, we were at the start of a new regime, which is constricting space a little bit. So there is some significance to do it on a regular basis. Yeah. So I think we're ready to take the remote participation of Shahzad Ahmad, Director of Bites for All in Pakistan. Is he coming out? I cannot see. He's participating from Islamabad, I think. Can someone brief me if someone's coming up? Because if not, I'll call Ritu.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hello.
So just so we won't waste time, I'll call on Ritu now. Ritu's from India. And again, she was not a part of this initiative, but we value an external eye who are doing similar stuff. In her case, it's a digital exclusion study, which they are also developing into an index. So insofar as we want to converge efforts, we invited Ritu. Take it away, Ritu.
Thanks. Is it audible? Okay. Thanks, Al. I'll start with the. Okay. So when we started Digital Exclusion Index, we were thinking that whether internet is an enabler of rights or a disabler of rights. So this we started when we 2 years of back when we started talking about Digital India program has come out, and there out of 15 services, 9 services were majorly focusing on digital services and making India digitally enabled. So the process what we started talking about, whether really India is progressing towards digitally enabled, or is it going backwards that side, or it's making more excluded society. I'm sorry. I will okay. So I will go through with the research methodology, what we started off, what are the indicators of the methodology, and how do we conceptualize this methodology into our parameters, and then what is the next plan forward for this. So for this study which we have, this is a study we have identified the 4 mediators of the exclusion. The first one is a poverty, second is geography, third is illiteracy, fourth is disability, gender, and age. And all of these mediators fall into the same hierarchy as well. The first parameter which we have given to the poverty is the first line of a set, and the second is a geography. So it means that the geography is the second barrier. Third is the illiteracy is the third barrier. Disability is the fourth barrier. Gender is the fifth barrier, and age is the sixth barrier. So in this report is, before I go into the digital exclusion report, let me give you the demographic situation of the country, so, and which will be verified in the, as we go about. So in India, there's a 70% of a population is living in rural part of the countries. As of now, there are 420 million internet connections in India. Despite of this fact that rural India is only 16% connected, according to the IMI report, while urban India is about 50%. But let's verify whether this picture is true or not through this study as well. So this exclusion chapter was a part of a large index report, India Exclusion Report, which is also available online. And the report is identifying whether digital and ICT services are public goods or not. So this was our preliminary study to understand this parameter as well. As I have said that there are 6 parameters which we had taken out. poverty, geography, illiteracy, disability, gender, and age, we identified that digital exclusion as a denial and inequality with regard to personal access to ICTs, the skill to use devices of owns without having any assistance, the ability to leverage the benefits of ICTs. This also identifies that poverty is one of the major barriers to internet access. When I say why, so it's like currently that India data plan is about 100 rupees, which is about $2, which is still on a higher side for the India, because it should not be more than a rupees 34, which is lesser than a $1, is about 76 cents or something. Because to make internet affordable in India, it has to come below, come to about 34 rupees. Poverty and socio-economic constraint digitally exclude the people belonging the lower rungs of the economic ladder. And if we think that what are the other directions of the affordable access to access internet is the access to electricity. So there are only 55% of the rural households have electricity. We also identified some of the tangible and non-tangible opportunities which are provided by the ICT devices. So tangible opportunities were communication, participation, and association. In educational, we found that access to information, ideas, knowledge and skill development is another aspect. Whereas in a materialistic resources and source of economic and social capital formation is another aspect of ICT devices. While non-tangible opportunities was freedom of anonymity. During this chapter of exclusion, which we also we gone through with the why we are excluded. There are two parameters which we identified is that ineffective agencies and exclusion by the state itself. The ineffective, when we talk about the ineffective agencies in India, there are the core policies which drive to the exclusion or to drive to the inclusion sort of, they are not effective to implement the policies. For example, the national optic fiber line, which is supposed to be laid out by 2016, is still not half done. Okay, and then other ineffective range of things were like ineffective that were discrimination of access to digital services, also that chilling effect of and penalties of a legitimate expression online, creating network shutting down the network, sometimes especially when in a stage of a demonetization happened in India, so that chilling effect also adverse the group of exclusion for this purpose. This chapter which we have conducted is now transforming into the exclusion index. We are taking the same parameters for this report and to identify whether the government India is digitally enabled or not, and how it is going to be how excluded we are. So in some of the cases I'll also try to give some of the examples. So for example, if we want to afford the internet, there's a person needs to travel sometimes 5 kilometers and give about rupees 20 per hour for internet usage. So the cost of travel and the cost of a daily wage of spending time is also to be considered when we measuring the exclusion as well. So these are some of the findings of the research and report, and some of the parameters when we drawn as well says that gender is one of the major barrier for the is a major barrier that women are discriminated by the society to access the digital devices.
Thank you very much, Ritu. Round of applause for Ritu. So you see how effective we are in spending 1 hour to talk about thousands of hours of work, no? So sorry for, but there will be online, but get our names, get the links. The presentations will be online. We probably won't have time for Shazad because there's another that will use this room very shortly. But if it takes a few questions that are very urgent or some insights, keep it short, please. We'll take it. We want to be as interactive. So please just go to the mic and introduce yourself. If there are others, yeah, please. The mic is not working too much. Can we have some volume for the mic?
Can you hear me now?
Okay, now I think it's working now. Thank you so much for the interesting panel. My name is Xian Hong, representing UNESCO. I want to congratulate you for developing such a wonderful index on open
Yanis,
governance.
can you hear me?
Open governance, which is so comprehensive, I must say, although it's focused on e-government, and also very pertinent. I believe it's not only useful for the Asian Pacific region, it can also be useful for the rest part of the world. And for us, it's also useful because we're also developing a range of indicators to measure the internet universality. We are focusing on 4 dimensions, which are quite overlapping with yours. The first one is about the human rights. I found your index so human rights based. And second one is on openness. We are also advocating for open internet. That's all about the open government initiative. Third dimension we are developing is on the accessibility. Again, so fundamental to the e-governance. And fourth dimension is multi-stakeholderism. It's talking about the governance model. It should be more participatory. That's also I see so much embodied in your index. So I look forward to working more with you. And also, UNESCO is organizing a session on Saturday lunchtime, and make sure you can also come. We can take forward the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you also. Our whole orientation is to study everything that's coming out because a lot of things are coming out and to see what we can learn and integrate. So it's not a fixed index from our point of view. We will evolve it and we will release it on a per version basis. So we are going to release a version 1. And yeah, that's one. Secondly, I think those who could not be here, Uganda and Colombia, are also very high that they want to do it in the region. So I will make a pitch that if there are any, of any resources who want to do it either regionally or nationally, we can sort of coordinate and help each other. Our only role is really just to help the research teams in countries sort of align with the general methodology so there is comparability across the data. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Alan, good noon. I'm Gilbert from AFEXI. It's Advocates for Freedom of Expression Coalition, Southeast Asia. I know that you're doing baseline research work on creating this index, but my question is, will you also have some normative recommendations in your report? Thank you.
A bit of clarification. If you want to answer per country, I'll also give it. We are not doing primary research, but yes, we are baselining. We have only done secondary research, but we're finding out that for some dimensions, we need to do primary. For example, civil society use. Nobody's really doing it. You might reach out to Civicus to do something with them on this. Normative, that's a tricky question. Is this a descriptive index or a prescriptive index? I think we are very clear that there's an advocacy component, and openness that we are proposing is a norm. It's a normative term in terms of we value openness rather than closed. Yeah. So, and yeah, we'd like to work with you because in Southeast Asia, everybody's backsliding on openness and democracy. So, but don't quote me on that. Do you want to add, Banyu? Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name is Eric, Executive Council member of APrIGF and also former e-government committee member of Taiwan. First of all, thank you for you propose the methodology and also make comparison with the other methodology that you never proposed. And secondly, because I see you mentioned, especially from I guess from Lisa, from Philippines, you're talking about trying to study regarding to spectrum policy. I think that's a very good way to approach that because for example, like to improve the infrastructure, to improve the internet penetration, actually is very capital intensive. So for e-government, try to improve the e-government index. Basically, you need to require lots of resources. For example, what's the key application for e-government could be one of the key applications could be government support and finance. So you need to try your best to maximize all the available resources you can find. For example, like every country has a universal service obligation fund. That would be one way to leverage that kind of resource to mitigate, to improve the infrastructure implementation. That's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick reaction about the tool. OAGI 1 had an open spectrum policy question, but after the first round, I think many countries were still not ready to engage that issue, and we felt that even on a knowledge basis, there might have been a domain knowledge issue. So we just reduced it first to a couple of areas, which is universal access policy and in the legal and regulatory environment. So yeah, but yeah, I'm as we go along with the telecoms development and spectrum is becoming a key resource for access, then we might really consider putting it back as a separate question. Yes, thank you. The one who's saying 0 minutes, what are you saying? We have to leave the room? Yes, I suppose so. You guys want to have any last words or? Yeah.
If you're interested in the concept of what OEGI Open E-Governance is, it's the methodology that we used, the manual that we used, as well as the survey instrument. And it's already available online. You can just go to the website of FMA, www.fma.ph.
It's a work in progress, so we're, and even, so as a final word, I will say that although we will release it, we're welcome to any feedback, even bad feedback. And what we want to do is to test it first, more countries. So right now we have a base of about 5 to 8 countries who have done something like this. So if your country is interested, we can do it. But again, there are resource considerations, so a special call out to resource organizations, donor agencies, because we can run with it. Indonesia plans to do it on a subnational level because they cannot just look at what's happening in Java, right? And a lot of data in Java, but all in the other islands. So we can do it a lot more. So with that, we thank you. We thank you for your time and your interest, and we hope to still get your feedback. We're trying to get a session in the IGF in Geneva, but it's our Colombian partner who has applied, and I'm not sure if that was accepted. But if you're in IGF and the Latin American partner called Nodo succeeds, then you'll also hear about us then. If not, you can contact us. Maraming salamat. Sawadee krap. Thank you very much. We have to leave, I think. There's another session.
If anybody still have questions left, you can come back to this room at 5 p.m. today for further questions.
Will we be here at 5 p.m.? We'll be drinking at 5 p.m., right?